Ciao, Kyle here from Tippy Canoe Herbs. Pardon my gaze. I'm staring at the sun on a beautiful cloudless and chemtrailless day. Sky is blue, it's mid-March, and it's cold. There's snow on the ground, temperature in the teens. It's a cold day, but spring is coming close. Spring is in the air. I could feel it. It's coming around. You could tell by the angle of the sun. I could tell more by the sounds of the birds that are coming back. And I could tell by some of these plants that are waking up. This is a plant that I think is really pertinent to Pisces season. It's a Pisces plant because I like to work with it a lot for the dreams, and in particular the pineal gland, the third eye. This is red osier dogwood. Let me turn this around. There's a nice stand of it here, here, here. Let's get some bigger picture tips here on what is going on with this plant. It's red. You can see this is one of the great ways to identify it in the wintertime, is by its red color. And it grows by the water. Not always, but it likes to be in places that have really well-drained soil. You could even see there's some like marshy muckiness. If I took a couple more steps, my boots would be wet. And it's a kind of shrubby. It doesn't get that big or tall, as you can see. That one right next to me is probably one of the taller ones. And if you're looking for this plant, and you're trying to identify it by its red stem, then look in the wintertime, because that's when it's red. See if you can get a good contrast here. Good contrast shot of the redness against that blue background there. Perfect. It's a chameleon plant. It changes. In the summertime, when you come to find it, you have to identify it by its leaves and its berries and its flowers. But the red stem turns back to green. So it becomes red in the winter. That's an interesting signature. And it's growing by the waters here. Very Piscean, very watery signature as well. So how does this plant relate to the pineal gland and to the third eye? Well, you could tell, there's a couple of different ways you can tell. You can tell by tasting it. Let me get a little bite here. Okay. Flip it back around. Now, as I'm chewing on it, there's a couple of things that stand out flavor-wise. It's astringent, which is obvious because it's a tree. Tree barks are almost always predominantly astringent. So when I taste that astringency, I know that there's going to be astringents somewhere in my body. It's really astringent in my mouth, so it's kind of telling me that this would be a really good mouth rinse for leaking tissues in the mouth, let's say gums that are loose, or as a gargle for a swish for the lack of tone in the vocal cords. And as I key in with my senses here, I could feel it the saliva toning my stomach quite well. It's really tonifying my stomach. But if I listen really closely to my body right now, there's another sense that I'm feeling. And that is the feeling of cold. I feel really, really cold in my third eye area, as if my skin is exposed and pulling itself back. It's like astringing and pulling and toning this, not necessarily on my forehead, but it seems like right behind my forehead, where my third eye is. And then the other flavor that I taste at this point of the year is slight skunky acridity, slightly, which whenever I taste that in a plant, that always tells me that it's got a sedative quality. So there's pretty interesting energetics. In Wisconsin, and there's a couple of different plants that is called kinnikinnick. Kinnikinnick means smoking blend. My shop is on Kinnikinnick Avenue. It's the main thoroughfare in Bayview neighborhood here in Milwaukee. And Kinnikinnick means smoking blend. So that means that certain plants in other parts of America have that name. A lot of times when you see the name kinnikinnick, it's referring to Arctostaphyus uva ursi, which is the bayberry, or sorry, the bearberry, the uva ursi plant. But here, if Father Marquette, Père Marquette, came with his canoe and explored and asked the local tribes people of this area back in the 1600s, what is that you're smoking? They would say kinnikinnick, and he would say, what is it specifically? And he would be referring to this plant. So in this area, according to the indigenous people of this area, this was the premier smoking plant. So that was the traditional way of utilizing this plant for medicine. It was through smoking it. Putting it in a smoking blend with tobacco and other things. Columbine would also be in that particular blend for this area too. So that's a really great way of working with this plant for the benefits of the third eye and the pineal gland. The other would be, this is how I do it nowadays, I just harvest this plant and I tincture it. There's a traditional way of harvesting it too. The way that they say is, harvest this tree, the tree bark, you want the outer bark, before the first thunderstorm of the year, but after the ground has thawed. And that's a great clue, because that says kind of what we're experiencing right now. It's a cold day, but you know, previous weeks to this would be a good time to harvest, and maybe within the next couple of weeks would be another time. And that's because the sap is running. The sap is running in the maple trees, the sap is running in the birch. And that's where the energy of the plant is right now. It's moving through the bark. So if I want to harvest the bark for medicine, I'm going to harvest it when the energy is present. And that is before the first thunderstorm and after the ground has thawed. I love little stories like that. They're really great to bring a utilitarian aspect, but also inject some poetry into the natural world as we look at it and interact with it. So I make a tincture with this plant, and I add it to a couple other plants that I use as a formula for a third eye opening dream plant. So this is a dream plant. It's really helpful for the exploration of dreams and how would you, the messages, how do you interpret them? Wanting to know more about your own dreams. There's a couple of ways that the signatures remind me of this. How it has, I would say I learned about this through Matthew Wood, and I applied it in a different way. He said that this is a plant specifically for people who see apparitions like the men in black, the people with like the top hat at nighttime, that they would use red osier dogwood for that, and also for night terrors. So this is a protective plant. Think about kinnikinnick. What is kinnikinnick? It's a smoking blend, and how does that work as medicine? It's creating an etheric space that holds the space for inspiration, for diplomacy, for ideas, non-tangible ideas, for them to take root in the material world. And the same thing can be said of dreams. So I started working with this for dreaming, and I found that what this plant offers is a nice protective barrier between your vulnerable state, as in you're under the influence in a dream state, and you may be subjected to the malefic entities in those worlds. And this offers a really protective quality for that. So I think that could be achieved simply by harvesting some of these branches and putting them under your bed. But certainly by ingesting or smoking or being, having a tincture, having some tea of this. I like to mix it with mugwort and other variations of some of the wild sages in order to achieve a really knockout tincture that I call Dreamweaver. But yeah, this is red osier dogwood. I'll probably come back, not to this spot because I'm in a park here. I have my red osier dogwood spots. But I'll be harvesting this in the next few weeks in order to restock that tincture, which I haven't made for a couple of years. And another thing about utility-wise about this particular plant is that it's a nice bow and arrow, it's a nice arrow making tree. So that's what a lot of indigenous people made arrows with, was the stems of this tree right here, or shrub, as you could say. And dogwood, later on in the year, it does have some berries, it does have some really nice flowers. Try not to confuse them with elderberries or elderflowers. And get to know this plant by its bark in the winter, know where it is, and then come back in the summertime and see that signature of the chameleon-like, being able to see something in the wintertime. So here we are, the veil has been lifted. We are in the wintertime, we're moving more towards the summer, in the spring right now. And so the light is coming back, the material world aspect is coming back. And in the winter, when it gets darker, we're in the more of the spirit world. And here we have a beacon to show us life in these etheric spiritual times of the year, which is very synonymous with the dream lodge, right? The bear goes into the den and hibernates during the time of year. And of course, the bear in a lot of traditions is the token animal for dream work. And this is the chameleon aspect of this, kind of helps me, it shows me in my mind, and maybe difficult for me to articulate, but it shows me in my mind how things in dreams can be revealed for what they are without being fearful of them, and also to offer a little bit of protection under those particular influences, kind of like tethering yourself to your material body, as if you were tethering a life raft to a boat, or so that you can know that you're still safe, right? As you're exploring and consciously and willfully exploring the dreams, so that you may have a little bit more triangulation to our reality that we are in. So that's it, red osier dogwood. Just wanted to give a couple minute video about this one. That's all. Ciao for now.